I know this thing is on, and I know that you can hear me. Nursing and healthcare needs advocates and activism. So what are you waiting for? Let's do the damn thing. Hi, and welcome back to The Gritty Nurse, an unfiltered conversation about healthcare, nursing, and the intersection of health politics and policy. My name is Amie, and I am The Gritty Nurse. This podcast examines hot topics in healthcare and discusses the changes that we need to see to have a more efficient, robust, and ethical healthcare system that is safe not only for the patients that we see, but also for those who work in the system as well. Sorry, no fluff here, just awesome, compassionate humans and a lot of grit. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on any real stuff from The Gritty Nurse. Hi everyone, and welcome to The Gritty Nurse podcast. Today we have a guest who is a force of nature and proves that fierce advocacy and viral fame can go hand in hand. She's a labor and delivery nurse who has become a powerful champion for birth equity, compassion, humor, reaching over 4 million followers across social media. Our guest today uses her platform to share evidence-based perspective that's rooted firmly in compassion with an equity lens. You've seen her work featured everywhere from CNN to the New York Times, and you definitely know her as a founder of an incredible nonprofit, Hot Mess Express, which mobilizes support to help overwhelmed families. From swaddling chickens to sharing evidence-based compassionate information about labor and birth, she's able to connect intimately with people from thousands of miles away. Please welcome me in joining the one and only Jen Hamilton to the Gritty Nurse podcast. So welcome, Jen, to the show. I think that I always do this thing where it's like, okay, so let me introduce my guest, but I think I probably should get you to introduce yourself. And I'd probably hazard to say that maybe people have heard about Jen Hamilton, maybe not. I'm sure they have. Well, how about we start with just getting a little bit of about your background, who you are, and what are some of the most interesting things that you're doing right now?
Okay, so my name is Jen Hamilton. I am a labor and delivery nurse currently. My nursing life started, though, as an ER nurse, so that was where I got my start. I did that for about 6 years, and then the last year I did that, I was the assistant director of the department, which made me not want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Then I ended up on labor and delivery, and it's been the absolute love of my life. Throughout my journey on labor and delivery, we, had the pandemic, which shut down the world, which caused me to download another social media app that I hadn't had before, which was TikTok. And through TikTok, I started sharing more about labor and delivery, about me as a person, about the indoor chickens that I have.
Right.
And throughout that time, I have amassed quite a few friends on the internet. Yeah, it's been so much fun. And the coolest thing I'm doing right now is I just wrote a book, which is super cool. It's been a couple years in the making, but it's kind of like my baby at this point. So I'm just glad for it to be coming out into the world soon.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. And I'm an author too. And it's such a journey, right? I think that if I thought about where I was 5 years ago, if someone said to me, "Hey, Amie, would you be writing a book?" I would have been like, no.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you probably felt that too. Like, what has that experience been for you? And we'll probably dive into the book a little bit more, but just what was that? What has that been? Has it been illuminating for you or?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much imposter syndrome that you get when you first start to write a book because it wasn't even in my dreams because I never thought that could happen. So I had thought about it. So when a publisher reached out to me, like saying, "Hey, we'd love for you to write a book on birth. Why are you asking me?" Like
Yeah.
I'm not the one. But being able to write things down has been so cathartic for me. Like I was never a journaler or anything like that, but a lot of the stories in the book, which are all HIPAA compliant, by the way, are kind
I
of like
believe it.
conglomerations of things that I've been through as a nurse. So, I may be talking about a made up patient. However, things that happen with the patient are all things that I've experienced in real life. Being able to recognize or remember each thing and, because sometimes I know that you know this as a labor and delivery nurse, I mean, we go through trauma, just experiencing things with people. So it's been very cathartic and kind of trying to build my confidence as I go. Like, I can write and this is fun. And, so that's been a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we as nurses kind of, give ourselves that grace to be able to be seen in different spaces. I actually spoke to a nurse yesterday. Her name is the non-traditional nurse, just talking about how we can show up in so many different places. And I think, being an author now too is another hugely important space that nurses need to take up and need to be in that space to share. Again, we've been seeing it time and time again where people are kind of telling us what we think we should know about nurses, and we're the ones that are nurses. And it's
Yeah.
kind of about time that we take that driver's seat where we're like, hey, I am an expert. And I got this little sense. And I think this is just something that nurses do. It's just like, well, why would someone ask me to do that? It's
Yeah.
because we are experts, right?
Yeah,
And I think that
absolutely.
your expertise has been shown through some of the work that you've been doing on social media.
I appreciate that. Yeah. It's been such an amazing ride to kind of see that, people do come to us on the internet for, because I mean, honestly, that's where people are getting their prenatal education these days is, and TikTok is the new Google. Like you have a question, you go on the TikTok search and you search it up, and you're going to have people of varying qualifications having a lot to say about lots of different things. And I think that it's high time that nurses are, in that space and speaking about evidence-based care so that our patients have something solid to look to.
Absolutely. And again, it's important that we do have nurses who are using that education to kind of inform the conversations that they're saying and that are out there, because there is so much confusion, right? There is so much misinformation I'd say there's misinformation before, but because now the internet's so readily accessible, it's so important that there's voices like yours that are out there saying like, here's what actual birth looks like, or here's what, some of the challenges that we're facing within labor and delivery. And, even you had even greater conversations, but I think which are important too. I'm going to back it up just a little bit because I don't know if you've ever answered this question before. And don't worry, it's not a test.
Okay.
What led you into nursing?
Ooh, such a good question. So my mom, when I was really little, she was the manager of Pizza Inn. And I remember being really little, like 5 years old, getting to go to work with her and filling up the Parmesan cheese on the table and stuff. But my mom went to nursing school whenever I was 5 years old. So I would sit at the kitchen table with her and study. I'm putting that in quotes, study with her and kind of look through her nursing textbooks and stuff. And the way that she kind of described nursing was that, how when you're sick, you want your mom. She's like, I get to be that for somebody else. And so, my mom, if I was throwing up, she'd have a washcloth on my forehead and give me Gatorade slushies. So I really thought that that's what she was doing at work,
Right.
which I'm sure she did a little bit of that. I don't know how many Gatorade slushies she made, but yeah, my mom has worked on the same unit for, let's see, I'm 35 now. So like 30 years
That's
almost.
amazing.
Yeah. So, she's just been an amazing role model for me. And whenever I was growing up, that's just what I wanted to do. Like I didn't really think too much about other things. It
Right,
was
right.
more like, I'm going to be a nurse.
This is where you're
Yeah.
going.
It definitely came from my mom. And my mom still works on that unit, still works full time. I think she and one other lady are the OGs there. Like they've been there for the whole time.
My goodness, that's amazing. And I think to myself that like I didn't actually have anybody that was a role model that was in nursing.
Yeah.
It just kind of my experience was just, my grandfather was sick and I was just like, hey, this is wild. I don't know anything about what's happening here. I thought I was going to be a journalist. I guess I get to do a little bit of that now.
Yeah.
But it was just like I didn't have that experience. But then you finding your community and finding people who share that experience of wanting to be a nurse, and then having an added person who you looked up to, which is really, really amazing. And it's just 30 years. Like I think when I think about those nurses who've been in those roles for that long, because again, now the challenge is trying to keep a nurse more than 2 years. It's just to say, like, look at these people that we hold up that are so important. And I'm so glad that you had that. That's so
Me too.
cool.
Me too. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. What kind of nursing does she do now?
She does, it's called the progressive care unit. So it's kind of like a
Okay.
step
Like
down
a
med
step down.
surgy type thing.
That's so
She deals with
amazing.
a lot more balls than I do.
Well, well, then interestingly, that's why I went into labor and delivery,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to deal with balls.
No. Uh-uh.
Oh my goodness. So let's pivot a little bit. So one of the things that I know you from is social media. One of the things that you have mentioned is that you're somehow an accidental star and TikTok kind of spot what like you kind of learned, and through TikTok you just kind of became this, sensation in terms of having that influence and voice. Can you pinpoint a moment in where you realized that this is going to be a little bit more than a hobby?
There's been so many points along the way. I think it's when I started getting recognized out in the wilderness. Like, having people come up to me in like I could be in Florida or in California or something and have somebody be like, "Oh my gosh, I know who you are." That was wild. Or I think also people recognize my husband before they see me. They're like, "Wait, are
Right.
you?" Yeah. And then even more than that, like people in my like I'll be working on shift and then going in to take care of somebody and they're like, "I follow you." So
That must be a moment.
yeah, those are the moments along the way that kind of bring it to real life. Because I think that when you're on social media, you have two parts of you, right? You've got the internet part, and then you've got the real life. And so when those worlds collide, it's kind of like the moment where you're thinking, "Oh, this is real. This is real life."
Yeah, it must feel a little bit strange, but also somewhat kind of empowering to know that you might have changed someone's outcome. You might have changed the way that someone's perceived healthcare. You might have, made somebody think twice about what they might decide to post. So it's such a privileged place to be in, but also it can be a little bit of a scary place.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, whenever I hear people say like, "Oh, like you were my prenatal education," I'm like thinking back, like, I hope I did them all right, making sure that because people are not taking childbirth classes like they used to. And so, um, yeah.
You're absolutely right, and just like you had mentioned that a lot of people are getting their information from the internet, so it's so important for us to be able to take up those spaces and to have those conversations so people can have, that education and evidence-based informed, research information, right? So how do you balance these realities where you navigate sharing this information, while also keeping your content quite relatable and funny, and like, you talk about swaddling chickens and things like that. So how do you balance that? Like, here is what you need in terms of birth safety, and here are my lovely chickens.
So I think that when people go into trying to have like a social media presence, there's a lot of pre-planning that goes into it. And I am not kidding you when I tell you I don't plan anything. Like if I'm thinking about, like how to titrate Pitocin, I'll make a video about it. If my chickens are doing something cute, I'll take a video of it. But I don't have like videos that are like, okay, on Tuesday I'm going to talk about this. I got to keep it balanced or whatever. My main goal in doing this stuff was to kind of keep it fun for me. And if I was to kind of try to plan out exactly how I was going to balance everything, it wouldn't happen for me. I'm very much a last minute kind of gal, procrastinator at huge procrastinator. And so I wish that I had a better answer other than just happens that way. I don't know. I'm very glad that I didn't niche down too hard to where I'm only talking about birth or only talking about chickens or only, I appreciate that the way that it's kind of worked out is that I'm allowed to be my whole self other than, just trying to be one version of myself.
Yeah, I think people see it, right? I think that's the whole aspect of authenticity. And that's what I feel like a lot of people are missing, because at least when in relation to some of the things that you're talking about, I think people feel that they can connect with you at that real level, right? They see that, not only is Jen an educator or a mom or a nurse, but they can relate to you just as a human being because you've talked about some real serious things. And I think it's so important that you take the time to speak about, maternal morbidity or, what's happening in relation to the Black maternal health crisis. Like, I think people can see that and say, okay, there is a lot more. And also that she's a human being. I think there is, I'd say, a loneliness epidemic. And And you
For
could tell me what your thoughts are on that as well. But it's just a lot of people are just trying to search to find people to connect with. And that's why where I'd say that a lot of your content is very relatable. So yes, you don't have to necessarily plan what you're talking about because some people are just like, this person's real. And it's really good to hear, the good things and also, sometimes the struggles, right? I think one of the things that I actually found it was such a really weird kind of roundabout way was about actually cancel culture and the fact that, nurses were going after you to report it's just, I don't know why that would even become a thing. So again, although you've spread so much of yourself on sharing, how do you mentally protect yourself as a nurse too when, there's that good side where you're sharing so much great information, you're sharing so much of who you are, but there is also that dark side where having a large platform comes with that other added responsibility, but also the fact that some people can just be, I'm going to just say it, people can be assholes. So
yeah.
how do you deal with that from a mental health standpoint?
So I had to deal with, you know, being okay with people not liking me early on. Like that's something that if you're going to do anything like this, you just got to be okay with it. My mom says true freedom is giving people the permission to misunderstand you. And
Hmm.
that's a very hard lesson to learn. But, when you're talking about me getting canceled, that was about me talking about how we need to be giving everyone compassion and empathy, including undocumented immigrants, including LGBTQ people, including, people who don't live the same life as you. And I think as nurses, it's so important that we're able to do that. And so I had to be okay with getting canceled for that. Like, if I'm going to be canceled for something, that's an okay thing for me to be,
Right.
or if I'm going to be canceled by a group of people, I would want to be canceled by somebody who has a problem with that. Like, I'm okay with that. So yeah, I definitely do not shy away from talking about things that I think are important and like my patients having access to reproductive care and my patients being able to get informed and empowered consent and making sure that my patients have even my undocumented immigrant patients that I'm going to care for them in the best possible way that I can. Because I think that every human deserves that. So, if I'm going to be canceled for something, I'm okay with that, you know? Cancel me for that, sure. Because
Yeah.
it says more about that other person than it does about me, honestly.
And it's also a defining moment about your character, right? I think that there are some people where it's for me, it's really important to stand on who I am as a person. And you're right. I remember struggling with people disagreeing with me, being like, okay, am I saying the right thing? And I was just like, wait a minute, stop myself. It's like, it's not about whether I'm saying the right thing. It's also about whether I'm going to do the right thing. So it's
Absolutely.
about being able to, stand in a place that can be very uncomfortable, but I know that I'm standing in the right space at the right time and defending our patients, defending immigrants, protecting women's right to talking about LGBTQ plus folks, and then also talking about how that impacts healthcare. We need that voice. I think people don't understand how for people like yourself and for myself, when we come into like healthcare, yes, we have a role at the bedside, but we also have a role to be speaking about the communities because healthcare doesn't stop at the bedside. Policies, procedures, the way that we think about other people impact the care delivery, impact how someone comes in to receive care from us. And I think that we would be doing a disservice to ourselves and our profession if we didn't take a moment to have those conversations. And of course, I think the biggest one that I've seen too is the fact that you pulled out a Bible. And I
Yeah.
think that shook people to their core. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what truth does, right? Truth has a way of really revealing itself in various different ways. And sometimes that truth brings out hate. But at the end of the day, like you said, you're standing on business. And I think that's showing people where, this is where the rubber meets the road. And this is how we should be thinking about people. Because at the end of the day, whoever comes into my walls will be treated and cared for. But the other piece is to make sure that we are talking about the things that are super important when it comes to healthcare, health equity, racism within healthcare,
Absolutely.
biases, and how to make sure that we protect any patient that comes in the door. So I take my hat off. When I saw that, I was just like, that is
Appreciate
right.
that. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much for doing that. We
Thank you.
have to talk about your book.
Yeah.
So birth vibe versus birth plan. I saw the name and I was like, birth is a vibe. And I remember
Right.
thinking about, even some of my patients, and whenever they came with a birth plan, I was like, I know this is not going to go the way that you want it to go. So as a nurse who's been present for thousands of births, what is the most important thing that you hope that colleagues will take away from reading your book?
Yeah, so I wrote Birth Vibes to really be applicable not only to patients but also to staff, because I think that sometimes it's easy as staff members to be really rigid in the way that we think about things, whether that's policy, procedure, like we have to do things this way. And then same for patients. When you're creating a birth plan, your dream birth scenario can come from, I have to do birth exactly like this, or else
Right.
I didn't succeed in what I set out to do. So Birth Vibes is about a cocoon of safety that you can build around yourself that revolves around the communication that you have with your team, with who you have there with you and what they do for you, with being able to have all of your questions answered and be able to adapt to new information as it comes, so that no matter what happens, that you can leave that experience still feeling positive about it, still feeling like you made your own informed and empowered decisions. Because I know that you've seen this also on social media, especially when you're listening to birth stories, you can have someone whose birth went exactly to plan, checked off every bullet point that they had, but they still did not feel respected. They did not feel heard. They did not feel empowered. They felt like they had to fight for every decision. And then on the flip side of that, you could have someone have a birth that goes wild and crazy, totally off the rails. Maybe they had an emergency C-section, or, they had a seizure, or, something crazy happened, but they still could leave that experience knowing that they were heard, respected, empowered, safe. So I think that so much of birth is less about what happens and more about how it happens.
I think you're absolutely right. And the other piece that I take away from that is birth is something that people remember.
Yeah.
I've run into patients that I don't remember them, but they remember me. And they're just like,
Yeah.
you were the one. And I think that we impact so much of what happens. And again, we know that like when it comes to working in labor and delivery, we can be there on the best day and we could be there on the absolute worst day. And it's just so much about how we come to the experience and making sure that we are trying to provide them with what they should, not just what they should expect, but just being there to be able to listen. Because I think one of the biggest challenges, particularly in labor and delivery, is that sense of control. And I think that if we could do anything to make them feel that they have a sense of empowerment, that they have the ability to make decisions, that we're giving them that informed consent or informed information, that they feel that they're in the driver's seat. Because I mean, I've had 4 kids, and that I would say that's probably the most point in time where I felt complete out of control. But having an amazing labor and delivery nurse, that is your person, like like beyond husband who was standing off to the sidelines. Having someone who truly understands and is going to understand is so hugely important. And I think you're right, it is about creating a vibe. So how did you come up with the title of Birth Vibes?
That's a good question. I came up with that. I've made videos about it, years before the book was even a thought. But it was just empowering people to think about birth different. Because for many, many years, it's always been birth plan, birth plan, birth plan. And the plan is great. I don't want anyone to come away from this thinking, well, you shouldn't plan. No, absolutely. I want you to be thinking about everything that you hope to do, that you hope not to do. But when you plan the vibes around it and how you want to feel, can marry your birth plan so well to where if you have those two things together, you are much more likely to leave that experience feeling that it was a transformative, wonderful experience rather than like something where you're having to fight the whole way to get exactly what you want. It's about being able to trust yourself and give yourself grace to make decisions that maybe you didn't think that you were going to. I tell people this example that, you could plan your whole birth or your whole pregnancy for a completely unmedicated birth, which is wonderful. you've practiced your breathing, you've practiced your coping, you've got plans for how you're going to enter each phase of labor. But then let's say that your oldest child gets a stomach bug the night before and you've been up all
Right.
night long and you're starting labor absolutely exhausted. Are you able to give yourself grace to reach for a tool in the toolbox? Maybe it's not an epidural, but there's none of this like all or nothing, like being able to use the resources available to you and give yourself grace to use those when you need them. And if you don't need them, then we keep them in the toolbox. But knowing what those tools and resources are and giving yourself grace in the moment to make those game day decisions, because some stuff happens that you never expected.
For sure. I mean, I've seen it with my first time moms. I've seen it with my G5 moms, right? Like I
Yeah.
think that, and it doesn't even matter, right? I think that just even letting them know that each birth is going to be very, very different is also even a part of that. And you touched on something I want to circle back to. You talked about, managing the fact that I think a lot of women feel that fearful of losing control. So how might you talk about managing that? And I think your book does probably touch on what does it look like when everything's starting to go up like in a situation where they feel that they've lost all control.
Yeah. So I give some tips and tricks in the book, but there will be people who experience, maybe one thing going differently than they thought and feeling fearful in that moment of like, well, what comes next? And that's where you are able to kind of advocate for yourself as far as what information you need. But you know what? There will also be people who experience birth where 12 people are running in. We got to go right now. They don't understand what's happening. Everything is going on around them. But in the book, I talk about how do you stay grounded in that moment? How do you look inward and be able to almost trust fall with your team in those moments where you feel like I have no control in this moment? Because you and I both know sometimes that kind of stuff happens.
Right.
But things like being able to have one person that you're looking to on your care team, that's the one that you're going to lock eyes with, that you're going to kind of go inward, and sometimes being able to close your eyes and just breathe and do affirmations of safety, like they've got me, I'm safe. So those moments will happen, but I'm hoping to empower people with some resources or tools that they can use if that were to happen to them.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important that we do give some tips and tricks in terms of how to kind of cope with that. And just on the flip side, like I mentioned, as a labor and delivery nurse, we deal with, the best things, and then sometimes we deal with the most challenging aspects. Does your book talk about coming in to expect to have a delivery and then going home with not having a child that was expected?
Absolutely. In the book, there is one story that is 100% true. And I've gotten the permission from the mom to be able to talk about this because she wants her story to help other women. So
Right.
I talk about loss and how you can honor your grief and also have the resources and tools that you need to be able to get through something like that. Because, no one goes into a pregnancy thinking like, this pregnancy is not going to come to fruition with a live baby.
Right.
And we see that. We see it happen. I don't want to say all the time, but, there are definitely patients that we have that we don't ever forget. And I think it's just as important to acknowledge loss when we talk about birth as it is to, celebrate with the moms who do go home with a live baby. We also have to honor and grieve with the moms who do not go home with a
Yeah.
live.
Yeah, I think it's such an important aspect of our work, right? To be able to one, come into a space where we are there delivering a baby, but then also on the flip side to still be there if a woman is experiencing a loss. And I'll further that to even expanding that because I know that's the other challenge of supporting, also this a support person or the spouse, because sometimes that person is left to the wayside as well. But I think it's so important that we show that vulnerability. I know that in nursing sometimes they're just like, oh, it's not you have to like be 100% objective, and it's like we can still share that we can be vulnerable too. It is their moment, but just to show that additional piece of compassion, even if it's not a word, it could just be,
Yeah.
a hand on the shoulder, whatever the case may be. I think it's so important that, we show up using that same energy we would for a birth for a loss as well. And I'm sure that through that story, we'll hear that as well. Talking a little bit about some advocacy. Does your book have a little bit of advocacy aspects? What are some things that you think that people need to know about your birth vibes in terms of advocacy?
Yeah. So in the beginning of the book, I actually acknowledge that there will be a lot of people who work within the hospital who will not like my book.
Really?
I am anticipating, and you'll know who the kind of person I'm talking about, but the kind of nurse or doctor or midwife who says, this is how it's going to be. This is what you're going to do. This is what I'm going to do to you. No, we're
Right.
not doing that. We're not doing that anymore. So I definitely give people tools in order to advocate for themselves and the things that they need. But then also talking about specific populations like Black women and how that affects them differently and how they will be in a situation where they feel maybe that they're not being heard or
Right.
that they need someone else by their side to be able to be heard more, and how that system that is there, I kind of give them like backstage pass into like, these are the things that you can say in order to escalate things if you feel like if you aren't being heard, or how do you get a second opinion if you feel like your doctor is not telling you the right thing, or um, how do you fire a nurse? Because I think
Right.
that that's another thing that can sometimes people say like, or think I'm stuck with this person, and they're not listening to me. So
Right.
there's a lot of advocacy in the book, and I hope that it helps people. And I know that yes, there will be people who work in a hospital who want me to say, well, just do what we tell you to do. Like, we have your best interest at heart. You just have to do what we say.
Yeah.
People have the right to make decisions that we don't agree with, and I will
100%.
protect that decision no matter what.
I
There
love that.
Everyone who makes a decision different than what I think is right is still a good parent making a decision that is right for them.
I think
So,
that's so important to hear, Jen.
yeah, and it boggles my mind when I see people, and I know it comes out of a place of like protection, like, I don't want a bad thing to happen. Okay, me neither. If you have all the information that you need to make a decision and you decide something different than I think is right, cool deal. I'm here with you and I'm going to ride this with you, whatever happens. We are trained to think about the worst case scenario,
Right.
but we have to understand our own bias in worst case scenario being a very small percentage of stuff that happens. So I'm down. I'm here to protect everybody's right to make a decision, even if I'm like, I would never do that. I'll be right here with you while you do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm right here, girl. We're going to do it together.
But that's our job. Like patient autonomy is so critically important. Give
Yes.
them the information. Here's the tools. Here's what we've learned. But if they want to do something different or outside of that, then it's still our job to be like, all right, we're here. We're doing this and we're in this together. Like I think that is more people need to hear that. And I feel like that will bring about more trust of the medical system, right? If you are sitting over somebody, telling them how they should act, telling them how they should be feeling, not listening to them, that's where people check out. They're just like, that person's not listening to me. That person's not validating my concerns. Oh, that person thinks that I'm into woo woo stuff. It's like, listen to what people have to say. Even if it's different than what you have to say or your beliefs, we still have to listen. We can validate. You can disagree, but as our job as practitioners is like, all right, we're like you would say, we're riding this bus so the wheels fall off.
That's right.
We're just gonna get this work done.
Yeah.
And I am so glad there's people like you out there that are hopefully will start changing people's minds about how we approach patients and families and how we can approach conversations. Because at the end of the day, I think people are forgetting that it is the patient's decision. At the end of the day, it does not matter what we think and what we say. It is for us to give information and them to make a decision and us to stand right next to them, be like, all right, this is what we're going to do. So I really hope that starts to change a little bit.
Yeah. I kind of want to make it uncool to be the other way,
Right. I
Like
think
if
that's right.
on a unit, culture is so important. and like how people are perceived is so important. And if we kind of like do judgy faces, 'cause I'm not about judging people, but I am if you're being a turd. So if we if
Right.
we kind of make it to where on a unit, like being that way is not cool anymore, I think that things will change.
I think you're right. And I think there's a lot of different ways to do that, right? I don't think and I think there's different flavors and different styles. Some people like the call out style. Some people like the like, all right, let's nudge in this direction. I'm a kind of let's lead by example. Maybe you don't like how this looks, but at the end of the day, I think we need to transform it. And I'm going to throw this at you. Why do people think we're the meanest?
Because I think that there are some. I think that
Yeah.
people have had really bad experiences. And I think that part of me being an advocate is recognizing that I look a whole lot like somebody that hurt somebody before, you know? And I think, especially as a white woman, that's why I don't get offended if I walk into a Black woman's room and she doesn't trust me right away, because I look just like somebody that has hurt her before. And I cannot take that personal. I have to use that in order to be able to protect her harder, be able to love on her more, give her whatever she needs to feel safer. The reason that people think we're the meanest is because there are some out there that are the
Yeah.
meanest. And so if we want to change that perception, it's not about getting defensive when someone says that. It's about showing up different than they thought we were going to.
Yeah.
And showing by example that maybe me, you individually are not the meanest, but acknowledging that there are some. And I think that part of what has been not allowing the obstetrical system to change is not acknowledging the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Just pretending like we don't do that, or like that doesn't happen. And I've been guilty of that in the past because I work at a hospital that doesn't do XYZ. Doesn't mean that there aren't like, for instance, I found out that there are hospitals that put the Foley catheter in on somebody who's not anesthetized.
Yep.
Wow. Why are we
Yeah.
doing that?
No. Yeah.
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 So like
Wild.
there's things that we have to acknowledge, whether it's behavioral things, systemic things, intrinsic bias things. We have to be able to acknowledge the things that are happening in order to show up different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think let me thank you from a Black woman who has had so many challenges with birth. I had preeclampsia with my twins. I ended up having HELP syndrome with my daughter. My daughter was uneventful, which
Yeah.
was wild. It's just like, what happened to all the other bad stuff?
She
And
was
then with
just
my
a nice
last,
girl.
right? And then with my last one, who's 18 months, I had preeclampsia again. And you would think that as a nurse going into the system that you're going to be heard more, respected, other people within that space are going to listen to you. And I could tell you it doesn't matter. It's like there was an indigenous doctor that I was speaking to who was telling me about his brother I believe his brother was a dentist or something along these lines. And he's like, it didn't matter even if I took off the white coat, walking in as an indigenous man, um, it came with racism, it came with biases, it came with, preconceived notions and judgments. And I think it's so important, like you said, Jen, just that you walk in as a white woman and you can recognize that. You can recognize the fear, because I had it. Like I remember, like with my last one, I had a Black surgeon who came in and I sighed a sigh of relief. I
Yeah.
said to her, I'm trying not to get emotional. I'm like, I am so glad it's you, because I've had experiences where people don't listen. And it's just like, you're my colleague. I'm telling you, like, this is bad. I remember with my twins, with having HELP, people don't talk about what ends up happening postpartum, the postpartum phase. And so it was bad. And then I'm telling these nurses, I'm like, look at my legs. They're like tree trunks. I can't breathe from walking from here to there. Discharge, you'll be fine. I came back with congestive heart failure, pulmonary edema. They thought I had a pulmonary embolism, and that was it for me. I just knew that even the people that I worked around, I couldn't trust. But hearing someone like you saying that I recognize all of that makes me feel like the system is changing. So I definitely want to say thank you for having that and acknowledging the fact that there are a lot of people that come into the birth space that are terrified. But if we have a nurse that can just say, hey, you know what? I understand why you might be scared, understand the history. I've seen it happen in real time, but I'm here with you to advocate for better
Yeah.
means a world of a difference.
I
So thank
appreciate
you for
that.
that.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that with me about your experience, because I always want to be better, and I think that hearing your experience and hearing how you weren't heard or validated, I mean, because you knew something was wrong. You knew. And all you needed in that moment was somebody to believe you in that. So I'm sorry you
It
went through
is
that.
the worst feeling,
Yeah.
especially and I think about my people who aren't well versed in
Right.
healthcare or medicine about what, like when they come into the space, how they must feel. And that's why, I continue to advocate too. So yes, thank you for all that you do. I'm recognizing that time is of the essence. How do you do it all? You're a mom, you're an
Oh,
advocate, you're a
such
book
a good
writer, you're
question.
TikToking, you are the other piece that we haven't even touched on, and you do so much. Like you also, it's not even just about you. You help so many other people. You help with fundraising campaigns. How do you do it all?
I really have no idea. I have no idea. I still work at the beds. I got to work tomorrow and the next day.
Yep.
But my during the week stuff, I kind of when my kids are in school, I kind of like compartmentalize it. Kids are in school, TikTok, social media stuff. Kids are out of school, it's kid time, family time, and then weekends, work time. Which is so funny. I don't feel like I work that much, but anytime I go to work on the weekends, my kids are like, again. I'm like, yeah, I'm a nurse, and someday you will also have to go to work. So yeah, they act like I'm never here, but I'm here with them 5 days a week during the week, and then they act like it's a surprise.
The kids, it's like they forget about it, right? It's just like,
Yeah,
you do all this other stuff. Like I had my son the other day complain about, like, he's like, oh, did you make sure that these chocolate chip cookies are right? And like I have peanut. I'm like, love, I'm a nurse. I know that. He's like, yeah, you're always doing nursing stuff. I'm like, no, I'm not.
yeah.
But it's just how they are. But like, yeah, how do you make sure you keep yourself healthy amongst all the various different things you do? You give so much because, again, as nurses, we are so good at giving away, helping, supporting. But what do you do for yourself? What would you tell other people who feel that they're super busy, how to take a break,
Well,
slow
this
things
is gonna
down?
be a weird one, okay? But I have pets that I love so much. I have indoor chickens, okay? So everyone should get indoor chickens, and then they will feel mentally cool, calm, collected. I gotta tell you, we just got this chicken coop built, like it's being done today. It's finished up, and it's fancy. It's very fancy. And so I've decided that when we get our new chickens, I call them my Lindas. Linda Marie's is what I call them. So I'm going to have a Linda of the week. And
My goodness.
that Linda, that chicken, will be able to come into the house and live with me for a week because they wear diapers in the house and stuff. I know it's not like a normal thing for people to say, but it is truly like my mental health. It may make me sound more insane, but it's like my woosah, like my little babies that I keep in the house that I love them so much.
Oh my goodness. But you know what?
What
At the
about
end of
you? I want to know what you do. What's your hobby? What do you like to do?
what do I do? Oh my goodness. I like to bake.
Oh, that's
I wouldn't
fun.
say that I'm necessarily good at it. I try lots of different things and sometimes they go really well and sometimes they don't. I
It's all
made my
about learning.
father-in-law a COVID cake a little while. I'll have to like put a picture in the captions, like when I put the video I made a COVID cake because again, we had some strong conversations over here about vaccines and COVID, and I was like,
Yeah.
I just got to do something well here. I'm going to make this COVID cake for you.
There
But yeah,
you
like I
go.
like baking. That's it's my like little peace and quiet. And honestly, having these conversations are actually quite cathartic for me because I think that with that disconnect where people don't feel that they have that space to be vulnerable or to share themselves, sometimes actually having conversations with people through my podcast is actually quite cathartic. I know that maybe that sounds lame,
Yeah,
but
no, I totally agree.
I love hearing and learning other people's perspectives. I feel that I always get something to take away when I have this opportunity to have conversations about it. And it's not just about clout chasing. It's about, real people who are doing really important
Yeah.
things. And, yeah. So, and then of course, guilty little pleasures.
I want to know. Tell me them.
I don't know. Should I?
Yeah.
Am I going to get in trouble?
No.
This is a really weird one. So because I had a lot of fear in going back to work after the pandemic. I got into doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is,
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
it's people are like, you really? I'm like, yeah, I
What a
do.
good outlet. I mean,
But
like
it is.
getting
I
out
would have
your
never
energy.
thought
Yeah.
that I would do that. But I'm just like, this is pretty cool. And my other strange habit is I like horror. So I started taking some screenwriting courses and
Fun.
I'm actually in the throes of writing a short horror film. Oh my God, I'm really putting myself out there now. That is completely unrelated to nursing, but it's just another one of my weird little passions where I like to write. And maybe this will be something you'll continue to take up after writing a book, or maybe you'll like that process was enough. But yeah, I've now just been like, I want to keep writing. It's fun.
That is so cool. And you know what that makes you? A whole person. We have so
Right.
many things about ourselves that, as a nurse and a mom, those are kind of like the two things that people want to put you in a box with. But
Right.
I love hearing about the other things that people do because it makes you a whole person and a badass, by the way, with the jujitsu. Like, that's really cool.
Yes. I mean, every once in a while, again, getting choked is not the best feeling.
No.
But choking some no, that's where it's like, is
See,
this
I like
healthy?
that in other ways, but not in the jujitsu.
Right. Oh my gosh. But yeah, we all have to have our outlets in terms of what keeps us safe, what keeps us sane, making sure that we have that person that we're checking with. And sometimes it's something as lovely as having a Linda come into your house for a week and
That's
giving
right.
a Linda a
Here,
cuddle.
can I show
Okay,
you?
definitely, please. Yes.
Well, hold
Oh my
on.
goodness, I heard sounds. Oh my gosh. Hi.
This is Pearl,
So cute.
and she
That's
wears her
Pearl.
diaper. You see her
I
blue
see
jeans.
her little diaper.
Yeah.
How
Well,
do
we
you
have
get
one
that
around here
on?
somewhere, but what's that?
How do you get that on?
It's like overalls. You see, and she's got lots of feathers, so she's,
My goodness.
but
That's
I love
wild. I
them.
love it.
And all the ones that I've gotten are like special needs chickens, which is another insane person thing to do. But I've had a blind one. I had a blind chicken. And the thing is that also their lifespans, especially the special needs ones, are not awesome. So I do know that I end up being like the chicken nursing home, and they come here to die eventually. So I've had a few of them, but I had a blind one. I have one right now that's got a neurological problem.
My goodness.
You have to give her medicine. Pearl has no butt feathers. She's just, so.
They're just attracted to you. You're attracted
Yeah,
to them. It's just a connection, right?
kinda.
They're your people. You're their people.
That's
You just
right.
got it. When you know, you know.
Exactly.
We could do a whole episode next time with your chickens.
Yes, they'd love it.
But yeah, thank you so much, Jen, for coming on to the Greeners podcast to share so much of yourself and all of the great work that you're doing. I definitely applaud you. Before we go, is there anything that we missed that we didn't talk about that you think is important for people to know?
No, I thought this conversation was so great. I had such a good time. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. And I'll be sure to make sure I post all of your links and then where people can find your book, because it comes out when?
It comes out in May, but it's pre-order available now. So
All right, we'll make sure that
you get your books, you can find it there.
Yes, we'll drop all the links and where people can find their books. And I hope that we can continue having this conversation again. Thank you so much for what you do. And, all the best to you for the rest of the day. And I will be following to see what's happening next with the chickens, what's happening with the Lindas.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Amie.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye now. Looking for a great gift for a nurse or someone who needs to learn about nursing? Check out my national best-selling book, The Wisdom of Nurses: Stories of Grit from the Bedside. Thank you so much for listening to The Gritty Nurse with Amie Varley. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast platform, please hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss out on any awesome episodes from The Gritty Nurse. Thank you so much and stay tuned until next time. Stay gritty.